Good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining us.
I'll begin. My name's Steph. I'm the CSP student coordinator.
Hi everyone, I'm Izzy. I've just joined last week actually, and I'm also a student coordinator, so I'm working alongside Steph. So great to see you all tonight.
I'm Laura. I'm a second year student at Brighton.
Yes, hello everybody. My name is Reena Patel and I'm one of the education advisors based at the CSP, and I'm delighted that Laura has joined us this evening to share her reflections of being a physiotherapy student during the pandemic. I was one of many people who saw her post an infographic on Twitter, and I think it really captured what a lot of us are feeling at the moment. And so I'm really delighted that she's here to share her experiences with us shortly. But because for a lot of the people on the webinar today, this is this is a first. Welcome. I suppose we're a year down the line now, 1 year on, and I was actually working at Chloe's University, Wolverhampton, a year ago when all this happened, and I remember at the time thinking, okay, this is going to last 3 weeks. I think most of us probably thought that, okay, a bit of a blip, we can adapt. Never thought that a year later we'd still be here. So we've come a long way, and despite what level of program you're at, whether it's first, second or third, I think it's impacted you all in different ways. And to previous webinars, we have focused a lot on final year students and applying for jobs and things. And it'd be really nice for this evening for us to just spend some time with the middle year and first year students as well, to gauge what some of the concerns that you might be having as well. And it's fair to say that I think physiotherapy education has undergone significant transformation. I mean, your program teams have had to work incredibly hard. Their workload has probably tripled, if not more, and they've had to adapt. And from their outset, their priority has always been to keep the wheels turning, to keep you all progressing through your programs and graduating. So I just wanted to recognize their hard efforts in that endeavor. But it has offered us an opportunity to do things differently. And we are hoping that I don't think physiotherapy education will look the same. And that's not just physiotherapy. I think healthcare and education more broadly will change from here on in. And the key things that I think have been coming across, we've been doing these webinars since November now. And the key topics of conversation are around that transition to remote learning. And that feels very, very different, and the student experience, particularly if you're living on campus. The impact on placements and the disruption to placements, or the change in placement offer and profile. And then the impact that you feel that the pandemic has had on your job prospects and graduation. So those are the three sort of key areas that students have sort of raised as part of these webinars. But I think these webinars are really valuable in coming together. We do them not only with students, but we do them with program teams as well, because I think it's really nice to hear from people from different universities nationally. So it's not just you and your cohort in your university, but we're all sort of going through this together. But I do want to take this opportunity to thank all of you for your professionalism, for your resilience. We are getting this feedback through our program teams, through our educators on a regular basis, how you've all stepped up and contributed. And one of the key things, whenever you ask a clinician or a manager, a recruiting manager, what are they looking for in a graduate, they always mention this word resilience. And I think you guys have got that in abundance. We've all had to adapt, and we've all had to be flexible. And I think that is something that's really worth showcasing, particularly those of you that are in your final year, in terms of preparing for interview, how you've demonstrated that resilience in this past year. So thank you for your patience. Thank you for bearing with us, and an absolute credit to you, an absolute credit to your universities. I also wanted to, this is a message that we've said right from the beginning really, is that you are all still going to be required to meet the standards of proficiency in order to enter the register, the HCPC register. Your journey there might be different, but you still have to reach the bar that all of your predecessors have reached prior to you, and that's no different. Your journey might look a bit different, but actually what I think you're bringing to the workplace is valuable. You've had that experience of what it's like to receive remote learning. You've had an experience, some of you, to do virtual placements. Some of you, that gives you an idea when you go out, when you enter the workplace, how you're going to tailor your patient education remotely or using virtual means. So I think those experiences are value added. They're really going to enhance your offer. So I think we just need to pause, reflect, recognize how far you've all come, and be proud of that, and be proud of the experience that you're bringing to the future of our workforce. So those are some of my key messages. Apologies for those of you that have been on previous webinars and that have heard this before, but I think I never get bored of saying it, and I don't make any apologies for saying it again, because I think it's really important that you hear that we have confidence in you, even though you may doubt that in yourself sometimes, because it's been a rough year. So if that's okay, I'll hand over to Laura.
So I'm going to be talking a bit about this mind map that I created, reflecting on my experience, and it follows on from what Rena was saying, and that lots of my friends and other students have been saying all the struggles that they faced, and I thought it was important to find some positives amongst it, and also I think it's a helpful resource for our lecturers as well to see the areas that we're struggling in, and the gaps that they can fill or help us to fill along the way. So starting off looking at the challenges, online learning has been a big barrier to get over, being behind a screen for quite a few hours of the day, not always as engaging as face-to-face lectures. Although I was talking to Steph earlier and we were saying that there's less commuting, a lot less driving, so it can be more convenient for those who don't live on campus. And mental health is another big one, because we know it has been really hard for everyone. And I think it's really important to recognise when you are struggling or when you are burning out and when you need to reach out for help. And yeah, just take care of yourself in that respect. And also remember that our lecturers and educators and everyone around us have also been through a pandemic, so they have their own challenges as well, so they can empathise with us and the things we've been through as well. And as Rena was saying, they just want the best for us as well. They're trying to give us the best student experience we can, and they're trying their hardest to do that. And that goes on to preparedness for placement. They're doing everything they can to get us the hands-on skills that we need. For Brighton, our placement was actually pushed back, and that also the educators could be more prepared for us to let COVID die down slightly. And it's meant that we can be more prepared for our placement as well, have some more time to process everything. And then I think the main worry for everyone is the impact on our future. And that's understandable because we haven't had as much face-to-face. Some people have had placements cancelled, but everyone knows that it's been a daunting time for us, and that our educators and future employers will be there to fill in the gaps that we do have and support us our way through. So moving on to some of the positive things, we've learned a lot of independence throughout the pandemic because we've often been at home alone or not in uni with so many friends, not living out at uni. So we figured a lot of things out for ourselves. And this links quite well with communication. We've had to send more emails or talk online virtually, making sure that people understand what we're saying and saying it effectively, which links into the digital skills I've got written there. And we're learning a lot of how to use Zoom's webinars such as these, which I think is really important for the future, because a lot of NHS things are moving online and a few things will stay online. So learning how to use digital things now will be really important for us in the future. And then in capitals, like Rena was saying, resilience is a huge thing that we've got out of this pandemic. We've all been through it and we've all managed to spring back. We're all still here learning how to be a physio. And we've developed coping strategies along the way. And in our careers, we are going to face challenges, maybe not as big as a pandemic, but we're going to have to spring back from whatever gets thrown at us. So it's a really important skill to have. And the next image shows some coping strategies that you could put in place. And these are some things that have helped me through as well. So talking to families and friends, because they have had their own challenges as well. They can support you if you feel like you're burning out or need a bit of extra encouragement. Learning to be open to change. I think that's a big thing from the pandemic, is that not everything goes in the same direction. Take notice of how you're feeling. So if it is all getting a bit much, then just take some time out. Maybe do some exercise, like that green one says, be active. Just process what's happening, and look after your psychological well-being. So the opportunities I think I've had, or that will come out of the pandemic, placement opportunities is a big one. I've seen a lot of it on Twitter. So like leadership placements or research placements that are coming out, they've all been really positive, and all completely new skills that we can learn as a student. The CSP was trying to get these placements out before, and COVID has sort of kickstarted these into action, which has been really great to get those out. Same as webinars. Like now we've got unis from all over the UK, and that's been the same across quite a few different providers. So we've had clinical physio webinars, the leadership student series. There's been so many opportunities where we can get together with students across the UK, whereas before some people used to come to the uni to provide a course, and that would be just for our students, maybe on one topic, whereas online we've been able to cover 5 or 6 topics with lots of different universities working together. And with those webinars and developing placements, we've learnt skills that the workforce haven't seen before. So we're bringing something new into the world of physio and our Band 5 roles. And then I think it's important to just remember you're not alone. Everyone on this webinar, everyone in your year group has all gone through the pandemic. Their studies have all been impacted one way or another. And that's the same with the educators, your employers, your lecturers. Everyone has adapted. Everyone has had their own hardship. So everyone has empathy for what you're going through at the moment and will be there to support you. So I've learned a lot from doing this reflection about the positives that I've learned. So I think it would be good if you have time to reflect on how COVID's impacted you, and hopefully you'll be able to recognise how many positives there are, like I managed to do. And I've just put my Twitter at the bottom there. If you want to see the mind map, we'll have the infographic, it's on there. And let me know if you have any questions, otherwise I'll hand back to Rena.
Thank you, Laura. That was really interesting. We had a round of applause there. I know, how many times was it retweeted, Laura, or how many likes did you get? Have you?
I really don't know. I mean, I think it was retweeted 100 times, maybe a few hundred likes on it. I was really impressed with how far and wide it spread, not just amongst students, or not just amongst physios, even other healthcare professionals. It resonated with them in one way or another.
And what prompted you to do it?
I think on Twitter, I used that quite a bit in lockdown, and I was in the same boat, really panicking, being quite negative about the pandemic, being, we've been put online, like we're not going to be the physios we were meant to be. And then I saw someone saying a few of the positives that could come out of it. So I thought I'd explore that a bit more and realise that it is not all bad, and we're just going to be a different set of physios with a new skill set.
You're going to be the trailblazers.
Hopefully.
So has anybody got any thoughts, any questions, any comments that they want to, does Laura's experience resonate with you? There we go. We've had one question there. How have you managed with motivation?
I think in the first sort of wave of the pandemic, I was with everyone else and I really struggled with motivation, just getting to grips with the online learning. But motivation has mainly come from my friends. I've got some really good friends on my physio course, and we've all sort of pushed each other on, sent each other links on Twitter that we found, helpful resources, making sure we have regular catch-ups, just to keep going with the motivation throughout.
Does anybody else in the room have, what helps to keep you motivated? What's getting you through this? So Laura's mentioned her friends. I know that some of our first years may not have had the opportunity to develop those friendships quite in the same way because you've all been in these bubbles, but what sort of has helped keep you going? So Anisha's asking, have you got any tips to stay on top of things during this time?
Staying on top of things, I'm someone that likes a list, so I just have a list of things to cross off and do. I know some friends have a diary and they allocate a time slot to do a certain activity and make sure that they also make time for doing other activities, so you're not just working through a list constantly. You allocate time to the day to get your uni work done, and then you've got time to yourself for some self-care or socialising for the rest of the week.
Anisha, are you able to unmute yourself and just say sort of what year you're in and what sort of things you're having to deal with at the moment, or balance or juggle?
Hi, I'm in second year at Uni of Gloucester, and currently I'm on placement. So I finish my placement for my 6 weeks next week, and I'm finding it really hard. So obviously it started near the end of my first year uni experience, and so I felt like everything was quite rushed at the end, and I feel like I didn't really take much in, and that's why I was kind of asking how you stay on top of things, because I feel like when placement happens, it's just placement and I can't really do much other than that. I'm so tired after placement and things, but I'm so glad that we get to do placement, because I remember you saying that yours got pushed back, Laura. So I am glad that we are going on placement and things, but it's just trying to juggle everything really, and I think that's what I'm finding the hardest at the moment.
Thank you, Anisha, for sharing that. So just so I'm clear, did you start your studies in September 2019?
Yeah.
At Gloucester. Okay.
Yeah.
So you had your first year, part of your first year, and then the latter part of your first year we went into lockdown.
Yeah. By this time last year. Yeah.
Okay. And then have you started your second year straight into placement, or did you have some academic modules before you went out into placement?
No, so we had 5-6 weeks of uni, and then we went on a 6-week placement block, and then it was Christmas, and then we had a 5-6 week block of uni, and then now we're on our 6-week placement.
Right. Okay. And sorry, how far along are you on this placement?
So my 6 weeks is next week. So next week's my last week. Yeah.
And then you've got back in the university again?
Yeah, and then it's Easter holidays, and then we're back into uni again, and then we've got a 4-week catch-up placement at the end of this academic year from first year's placements.
Right. Okay. Thank you. I think it's fair to say that placements are tough. I don't know if any students on the call who've done or in the final year or further down the line, they are mentally quite it's difficult. They're difficult because you've got the challenge of being in a new environment. You're having to adapt to this new environment in quite a short space of time. There's a lot, you're having to process quite a lot. And then being on placement at the moment with the addition of the pandemic is adding an extra sort of component, a dynamic to that. So I think even if the pandemic wasn't happening, I mean, I know Chloe's on the call. I'm going to pick on you again. Sorry, Chloe. But you had, did you? You had some placements, didn't you, before the pandemic, Chloe?
Yes.
Yes. Do you want to just describe what they were like, the ones that you had pre-pandemic?
Yeah, so the first placement I had on second year was a first contact practitioner placement, and that was in January. So that was just before the pandemic was kind of starting. We'd heard about everything that was going on in China, but we hadn't really had much come over here by that point. So everything was pretty normal. The only thing really that we did that you wouldn't have perhaps done before was just checking with patients who were coming in, if they'd sort of travelled in the last sort of period of 2 weeks before they've come in, but it was still all face to face. Then I went to a respiratory placement, and that was half of that was before the pandemic, and then half of it was during sort of the beginning of the pandemic. So that change during that placement was kind of the biggest shock to me, I think. Going from just sort of a normal ICU environment to then sort of having an influx of COVID patients, it was quite a shock. It was a new environment to get used to. So it was a lot sort of mentally, because obviously you're on placement. Usually you'd be sort of quite stressed. You've got your continuous professional development to do alongside your placements. And then obviously having the shock of that coming in as well was quite a lot. But I think it was an interesting experience, and I think it taught me a lot, really. And then following on from that, my next placement got cancelled. It was supposed to be a neuro placement, and it got cancelled, and then we sort of went into the redeployment schemes after that. So yeah.
But thank you. But in terms of the placement you had in your first contact practitioner, you know, that sense of just feeling overwhelmed, and it's a daunting thing anyway, isn't it? I suppose and then COVID on top of that just adds more to that stress.
Yeah, it's in terms of sort of people who would be going out before the pandemic started, I'd say that it was quite it's a stressful environment anyway. You've got a lot going on. It's going into a new environment, meeting new people, meeting your educator, it's a lot to take in. But I think if you sort of do the preparation beforehand, and go into it sort of as positive as you can, that's sort of the best thing you can do for yourself to start off with, and then take it as it comes.
Thank you, Chloe. Anisha, do you have any work on top of that you've got to do on top of your placements?
So we've got assignments and things due in, which is near May time. But as soon as we come back from our Easter holidays, like the first day back, we've got a presentation due.
From from the sounds of it, you're doing brilliantly, and I think what you're feeling is perfectly justifiable. And I don't think it's to do with you not staying on top of things. I think it's just a case of the situation at the moment is a lot to get your head around. But it seems like you're coming to the end of this placement, then you're going to have a bit of time and a bit of breathing space to plan it for the next bit of work that you've got to do. But, you know, reach out if you're feeling overwhelmed. That's for everybody on the call. If you're feeling overwhelmed, reach out to your tutors. It's always better to get in touch with them sooner, and we can put measures in place to support you sooner, rather than things escalating and getting too overwhelming. Steph, I'm not keeping an eye on the chat. Is there anything that we want to pick up?
I think one of the things Bryony has shared, that she works part-time as well, and it's about balancing different commitments, and we're just talking about how to make sure you schedule time to rest, and especially you know, being, as some of you know that have, you know, either working or doing placements, we can really take it out of you, because there's lots more to remember. You know, all the PPE that you're wearing, traveling is a bit more stressful at this time, so definitely be kind to yourself and put in the time to rest, because it's a long course and you want to give it your best, and that definitely means looking out for your well-being. Be your own best friend. That's what I always say. What would you advise a friend to do? Yeah, is there anything we're missing? Some great ideas about how to stay motivated, what to do in your sort of free time to clear your mind and be active, which is always good. I think we know it's a struggle for a lot of physio students. We hear that you're hands-on and you want to do something active, and you didn't plan to do a course that is on the screen so much. So we know that this is an adjustment period for you guys.
And also, everybody's affected by this. And I mean, what we haven't spoken about is the sort of personal toll this has taken. So physio aside, you know, we'll all have our own issues and as a result of COVID, whether that's, you know, a friend, a family, or mental health, or all sort, you know, it's affected everybody. There's nobody that's untouched. And, you know, talking about like low levels of motivation, I've had days like that, but I feel that now is the time to have those conversations. I think, you know, people are more receptive, people are asking those questions, so it's okay to reach out and you know, have a conversation with your educator. And, you know, is it okay if I schedule some time? I think people are hearing and listening a lot more than we have done in the past, in terms of being kind to each other and compassionate towards one another. So don't ever feel you can't ask those questions, you can't reach out. I think it's really, really important, because what we don't want is any of you burning out. You know, that's really important, that we keep you going and you complete. So whatever it takes to keep you on track and avoid that is really important.
I think Lee's put some added pressures, said some added pressures that he's experienced. And I think don't ever underestimate the stress it causes when there's issues with technology or online, or if you're unfortunate and your university has a cyber attack, because that is your way of interacting and doing your course and you know, doing so much. So I absolutely sympathize with the fact that you've had to deal with that, Lee.
That is, particularly at this point in time when you're so heavily reliant on your IT systems to be working, that's really unfortunate timing. But I'm sure the team will be doing what they can to mitigate for that, and to make sure that you're not in any way disadvantaged as a result of that. I wanted to pick up, Laura, on what you were saying about online learning and sort of the fatigue of that, really. How are people dealing with that? How are you coping with the sort of online lectures and being in front of a screen? And that's not just to Laura, but all of you, really. What are you trying to do to manage that? Because that's quite hard.
Yeah, I think a lot of time behind a screen can be quite just generally tiring. You're sat in a chair all day, you don't get much time to stand up if you've got lectures all day. So I think just in your breaks, if you can go up, stand up, walk around, go for a walk. I know, not to name drop, but Izzy on here, she was telling me the other day about how tired she's getting, and her posture is struggling as a result. So she's actually bought a gym ball to sit on while she's doing her lectures. So just adapting your environment that you're in really helps.
Yeah. And also your universities will have mechanisms for feedback as well, whether that's end of a module or end of a year, and that's your opportunity to provide any of that feedback, you know, of whatever, you know, we always want to hear how students are experiencing the programme and the modules, and what areas we can develop and improve on. So do keep those communication channels with your programme team, whether it's through your group rep or whether it's via email, via your personal tutor. Use those avenues of communication. Okay, is there any other questions around Laura's presentation?
I think around, you know, as someone who experiences lots of eye strain, it's trying to find other ways to continue your learning, your interactions, and definitely been hearing more from students that podcasts have been really popular, and audiobooks. So, and also that has the benefit of you can sometimes go out for a walk and listen to something. So, so hopefully those kind of things can help. But I also appreciate, yeah, sometimes the recordings and those things aren't always great because you're not having that live interaction.
But Lee, that's something to feed back to your programme team. I think pre-record lectures have a role in terms of everybody's juggling different things at the moment, and it's hard for everybody to be available at the same time for a live lecture. So having it recorded offers that flexibility depending on people's individual circumstances. But if you feel that there are particular modules where you really would value that live interaction, then do feed that back to your teams. And I've been doing a lot more telephone calls as well. So where I don't need to be in front of a screen and I can make a call instead, that's what I will do, just to give me a break from the screen. Okay. So does anybody else have any general questions that they want to ask at this point about anything to do with your program, to do with placements, to do with applying for jobs? Thanks, Chloe, just saying keeping a routine in terms of lectures, and that helps with concentration.
Okay.
Yeah.
India's asked, any tips for preparing for a first placement? Brighton students have just got ours. Laura, have you been tempted to check yet? Okay.
I'm holding back until after this to have a look.
So anyone who's been on a placement, what are your top tips?
I wouldn't say do too much pre-reading. Do a little bit, so brush up on whatever area it is. So that's a bit of anatomy, and yeah, just be proactive when you get onto placement. It's the small things we were told about. So I know getting the laptop for the first thing in the morning, so you do your list, or yeah, the small things will be noticed and appreciated. But yeah, just enjoy it.
What year are you in India, Rose? You in your first year or?
I'm second year.
Second year, right? Okay. Is this your first placement?
Yeah, we start in about 5 weeks, I think it is.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So I think in terms of expectations, they develop as you go through the program. So what educators will be expecting of a student on their first placement versus a student in their final placement will greatly differ. So I think there's there is some flexibility there, and I think for your first placement, it's going to be those aspects of communication and professionalism and showing that willingness to learn and that motivation. It's those sorts of, you're not expected to know it all at this point, but be prepared to search for the answer if you don't know, and just be proactive, like Annabelle said, being proactive. So it's all those sorts of what I call critical skills. They're not soft skills, they're critical skills that they'll be looking for in that first placement.
Cool, thank you.
No, that's okay. Anything you can do to help them out, answer the phone, or just go and to do the handover, or whatever it is that just helps the team out at this point.
Yeah, cool.
Can I just add, I think I was told just keep asking questions, because loads of people don't ask questions, and they said just keep asking questions even if you think they're silly, because that just shows that you're interested, and I think that really helped me as well.
Cool, thank you.
Should we go to Katie? So I've just found out I'll be doing a virtual placement in 5 weeks. I'm a little bit concerned of not being in person. Has anybody done a virtual placement on the call that wants to share?
So mine's a bit mixed because I'm on pediatrics at the moment. And so I've done some clinical stuff and I've done some stuff on the ward, and we've done video stuff. And for videos, I think you just need, and like phone calls as well. I think it's just your questioning and the way you word things and phrase things. I think that's the most important part that you need to really work on, because that's what I've been working on as well, because what you say might mean something to you and something different to the person on the other end. So I think that's something that, would help.
Thank you, Anisha. And it's great that you're getting these opportunities at undergraduate level, or so you're getting that experience as a student before you qualify. I think a lot of services, are particularly around MSK triage, are probably going to go virtual. So I I think that experience is going to be invaluable to you, Katie. And yes, it's not seeing people face to face, but you will get those opportunities as well. You will get those face to face interactions. But this is an innovative sort of placement that you've been given, and just take as much learning from it as you can. And I think, Anisha, your point around you've got to refine your questioning, because you haven't got the non-verbal cues quite in the same way as you would face to face. But I think I wouldn't be concerned. I would be really really excited to be trying this new placement approach, this innovative placement approach. Chloe, any advice for interviews? Steph, do you want to just talk about what we've done previously?
I put the link in the chat. So
Okay,
at the last month's webinar, we had a newly qualified graduate from Robert Gordon University sharing her experiences of transitioning from student to Band 5, and talked about the interview process, which was virtual as well. So if that's going to be your experience, definitely have a look. And we also had an AHP director who gave the employer's perspective of what they're looking for from an applicant. And I think you'll find that will be really reassuring. So definitely have a look at that. Also, I just want to plug some of these questions. If you're looking for responses from other students or graduates, especially because we've got quite a small group here today, what lots of students do is post on Twitter or Instagram and ask at the CSP students to share the questions. We often get a really nice response from across the UK, lots of different experiences. So definitely use that as a way to get different experiences, to find out different tips, how to prepare for different types of placements. And I'm sure Laura will vouch for the fact that the physio community, especially on Twitter, is very helpful.
In terms of some of the things that come to mind, I suppose you'll be doing your personal statements. Your personal statement's quite important. And one thing I will say is that personal statement has to be personal to the organisation that you're applying to. So I've been on the receiving end of shortlisting applicants, and people are telling me how good they are and all their skills, but how does it match to the employer? So it's about making sure that you're tailoring your personal statement to the employer, and referencing their values and referencing parts of their organization that makes you stand out. So that's one thing that I would work on. So look at when we're shortlisting applicants, we're looking at the person spec. So look at the person spec and make sure that everything on your personal statement and application form ticks all of those. And if it does, then you will be shortlisted. They would have to shortlist. So that's where I would focus my attention, is making sure that you're specific to the person spec and you're specific to the organisation you're applying for. It's really evident when people just copy and paste their personal statements from previous job applications. So try and avoid that. And also seek advice from your local careers services as well. Your careers offices, or each university will have their own careers advice service, so utilise them as well. They can often proofread applications and personal statements.
Rena, sorry to jump in. I noticed there's a question from Becky that I think we could go back to, because that was 708.
Okay.
Her question is, this is a bit random, but does the CSP assist with placements abroad or any volunteering abroad?
Yeah, go ahead, Steph. Yeah.
So, I mean, in terms of, so I imagine this is an elective placement. So we, as part of your insurance, it does cover some countries. So do have a look on our website. I think it's probably csp.org.uk/insurance, and because you will need to look into insurance, and so it's good to find out what's already included as part of your membership. Every year we open up the CSP Charitable Trust opens up the opportunity to apply for funding. It has just closed, so it won't open again until January 2022. But do look, if you are considering a placement abroad, definitely look into funding, because that always helps around expenses. And there are some experiences that students have shared on our website in previous Frontlines. There is also a professional network for physiotherapists who work abroad. So if you just want some general information, then about that's more around sort of international development work, that's definitely useful to look at. But what I would advise again is go onto social media and put out the question, tag us in, and you'll get lots of students who will share their experiences, especially if you've got a country in mind, because I bet wherever it is, there'll be some students who have been there, and that'll be really helpful. So hopefully that's useful.
And also, you'll have your own international office at the university who will already have links with organisations that they already work with from a work experience or volunteering point of view. So that's an opportunity. That's an option available to you as well if you don't quite know where you want to go. And they'll have some good links that you could tap into there.
I think I've seen a question from Prem. I'm just curious to ask if anybody actually been to a respiratory placement and assesses any COVID patients and what that experience has been like.
Okay, yeah. Does anybody have any experiences they'd like to share? Has anybody assessed a COVID patient?
I have. So basically, I just want to say, first of all, like, don't try and let it put you off about the whole COVID thing. Don't try and sort of let it overwhelm you. At the end of the day, you still need to go into it as you would any respiratory assessment. Assess for the problem, whether that's sputum retention or whatever the problem is, and treat accordingly. Don't try and sort of make allow yourself to sort of get overwhelmed by the idea of COVID. And I know it's a very overwhelming environment you're going in. There's all the PPE that you perhaps wouldn't have had to put on before. But just sort of assess it as you normally would, as you've been trained to do in all of your lectures. Just assess it like that and sort of think logically from that about what you do. So yeah, just try not to let it sort of put you off or overwhelm you too much with that. I think just sort of treat it as you would any other patient, respiratory wise.
And Chloe, have you had to face many patient deaths on placement? Has there been any?
Yes. In terms of dealing with that, I think it's really good to speak to perhaps your educator if you're finding yourself struggling with things like that. I know that when I was on my respiratory placement, I did sort of need a moment at one time, and I spoke to my educator. I said, is it okay if I just have a moment after a patient had passed away? And she just said, yeah, that's absolutely fine. Take 5 minutes. So I went to the toilet, I sort of let it all out, just tried to sort of calm myself, because at the end of the day, it's obviously an awful thing, and it's going to impact you and impact sort of your placement and sort of even just sort of your life as well. Just experiencing things like that is something that you perhaps wouldn't have before. So obviously take the time out to sort of process it. Obviously when you go home, try and process it as well. But you've still sort of got to be there for the other patients and sort of have that same level of care. So obviously take time out of the day, and as long as you need to sort of try and process it at that time, but sort of still try and sort of have your head on to be able to treat all of those other patients that need you as well.
Thank you, Chloe. And I think we're a lot further along than we were a year ago in terms of the PPE requirements. You know, a year ago there was a lot of uncertainty, whereas I think it's very you know, it's more established now, the procedures, the processes around PPE and students' access to that, and so it's a lot more, there's that assurance that perhaps wasn't there at the stages of the pandemic. I just wanted to pick up on a question that I saw from Bryony, I think, around how much contact do we have from our clinical educator and what should I expect from them as a student? So that's a really good question. And I don't think I can give you a specific answer, because it's all going to depend on the environment and the context. What I will say is that having students is a part of an educator's workload, and they'll be balancing and juggling a lot of other priorities alongside having a student. So there's no prescription on how much time. It depends on the student as well. Some students require more time than others, depending on their year of study, their level of study, their prior experience. So I can't give you a set answer for that one, because it depends on the context. But I think we do need to move away from this idea of being with your educator all the time, because that isn't it's not preparing you for future practice. Actually, you need to be able to work independently as well, and know when you need to seek guidance, and that what that one-to-one model, sort of being in the pocket of your educator, that's not going to help you in terms of your sort of autonomy when you qualify. So we do need to be open to different models, and it's not necessarily about the contact, it's about the quality, and it's about how it's supporting your learning, and whether it's right for you. So I don't know if anybody wants to come in on that. Vicky, you're still on the call. Do you want to just what's your take?
No, it's not one-to-one holding hands every step of the day, every step of the way anymore. You are given much more opportunity to show your skills, to show your autonomy, to show what you are capable of doing, and to demonstrate that. I've got students who have literally this week, they're finishing their first placement, and they have been spending time alone with patients, assessing them, both subjective and objective assessments, and treating them where they're capable. So it's all about what you're able to do. So at the beginning, you'll need more input. As you progress and your skills increase, you'll be able to do more autonomously. But there's lots of things you can do on your own without your educator. You can read the patient notes without them. And if you're on a 2-to-1 placement, or whatever wonderful term they're using for the different things in the different areas, so synergy, any of those split type placements, you may have the opportunity to do peer working with another student as well. And that might be a student that's actually in your cohort, but it might be a student from another university, from another year, on another programme. It might be a nursing student, or an occupational therapy, or a speech and language student. And you will work together, and they're much more trying to encourage that sort of working. And in terms of the workforce, that means you can really evidence those skills when it comes to applying for those Band 5 jobs. It's really preparing you for the real world. You don't work on your own just with physios in the real world, or I very rarely have done. You're always working with other professionals. So, I mean, it does vary by placement. Some of them, a community placement, you may spend a lot of time with individual people, but it may be that you'll spend time with a physio, time with an OT, time with a podiatrist, time with your therapy assistants. You'll spend time with maybe the district nurses, the GP, depending on what setting it is. So that there's lots of different professionals you'll spend much more time with. Does that help?
Yeah, thank you. As you were talking, Vicky, I was just thinking about my first day as a junior physiotherapist. That's what we were called then. We weren't Band 5s, we were junior physiotherapists. And I remember it so well. It was a rehabilitation ward. And I arrived there at 8:30, and my senior gives me the ward book, and she goes, "There you go," and off she goes. That was my first day. And my training did not prepare me for that, because my training, I literally was in the pocket of my educator and that didn't prepare me for the reality of practice. So I think being left on your own is sometimes, I see that as a good thing. They're trusting you, because if they didn't trust you, they wouldn't trust me, they wouldn't leave you. So if they're giving you that space and that you know, that's a positive thing, but also, like Vicky was saying, it's so essential for when you qualify.
I was exactly the same when I started as a band 5 bank physio, respiratory. We sort of met in one place, and I was sent off to a different ward to go and find what I was doing on that ward. But I must say what Stephanie's just said, I wouldn't have survived without the therapy assistants. They are godsends to you as newly qualified and as a student. They have such a wealth of knowledge and experience. They're used to that nitty-gritty and will spend the time helping and supporting you. And they're so important to your journey. But yeah, mine was very much in at the deep end. Here you go, from having been a student and everybody being there all the time.
And Bryony, you mentioned that you've spent 6 years in retail. Now, don't underestimate the value of that experience, because that will help you, you know, in terms of your dealing with customers or having to prioritize or work in a team. You know, all those things are so easily transferable to a healthcare environment. So I think you're going to be great. Can I just take this opportunity to thank Laura for coming along and sharing your reflections. I wish you well with your placement, and stay in touch. And thanks, Vicky, as well, for sharing your insights as well. That's always helpful.
Yeah, follow us on social media. Go on to our students ICSP. It's I'll send you the link by email, and subscribe to emails. Then you'll be notified whenever we do webinars. We've got one coming up on virtual consultations. I hope to see you there. I'm not sure. Chloe, you're still here. Great. Chloe's going to be joining us for a webinar on FCP in May. Very excited about that. So, and if you want other webinars and you've got ideas, about what you want to do, maybe you want to be involved, let us know. We totally want to be delivering what you guys want, and the only way we know that is by you letting us know. So thank you so much, guys.